Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Kimpston. I'm one of the pastors here at Lutheran Church of Hope. Super excited to be with you all. And we are in the midst now of a really special time of year called Advent. I'm curious, who grew up celebrating Advent in some official capacity? I'm just curious. Okay, so quite a few of you, actually. That's good. That's not the norm at every service. A lot of times people are like, do you mean the general time of year of Christmas? We're like, no, there's actually a part of the church calendar in which you can see over here, we've lit the first candle in the wreath over there to my left, your right. And you might know the words associated with the different weeks of the calendar. And all of the Advent wreath. You might get it a little bit confused. You're like, wait, is Advent before Easter, or is that Lent? You're like trying to figure all this out. Maybe you're looking at me and you're like, I really don't care at all. No matter where you're at with this, Advent is a very specific thing, actually, much more so than we would think. And we are creating an Advent series to talk about this at Men of Hope as well. One of the things that I have the distinct privilege of doing is helping lead our men's ministry here. We have every decade represented from 20 to 90 on a Wednesday morning. We have groups all throughout the week, so if you ever want to know more about that, you can find that online. Shameless plug, because they gave me a microphone. But also because we're doing a series called Adventure. You get it? Because Advent and adventure. Because dad humor in men's ministry is currency, and I am Jeff Bezos, right? Like, I got a lot of dad jokes. And so we thought that this would be a good kind of way to talk about, okay, what is Advent really about? What is the adventure of Lent? Because it's not just about watching your favorite Christmas movies. It's not about, so what is it actually about, and what is Scripture actually pointing us to as we lead up to the birth of Jesus, the coming of God to this world around us? And so I did what any person who wants to be simultaneously confused and entertained did, and I went to AI, and I said, "Dear AI, please, can I have a graphic for adventure?" I kind of explained what it was about. And so I brought this picture. They gave me Santa on a motorcycle in the mountains, which is something. And so I asked it to add, and by the way, I showed these pictures to Pastor Mike and said, "Hey, Pastor Mike, look what I did." And he said, "Yeah, these, are something, and we probably shouldn't use them, so that's why I'm showing them to you now." And so I said, no, we need Jesus in this as well. And so it gave me the gift that keeps on giving. This is Jesus dressed up as Santa, riding a motorcycle in the mountains. This is the picture that keeps on giving, friends. The more that you notice about this. So first of all, Jesus is carrying, first of all, I am a serious pastoral figure. This isn't what Jesus looks like. But we all knew who this was supposed to be as soon as this was, right? Jesus is wearing red, like satin shoes situation. He looks like he's carrying a bag of potpourri on the back. Jesus, he does appear to have like a glass eye of some sort, and is being followed by this indeterminate kind of demon squirrel dog creature. And if you notice, Jesus can walk on water, but apparently he also does not make tracks in the snow. This picture gets better and better every time I see it, which is why none of us are going to send this to Mike. We're just going to be cool, okay? But the reason that I show this is not just for the pure entertainment of it. Regardless of your experience of AI or your experience with Advent in the past, what happens this time of year is that the season of Advent gets overshadowed by the holiday rush that happens starting right around Thanksgiving, starting with whoever got run over at Walmart because they were trying to get a TV off for like 70% at 3 in the morning, or whatever happened on Black Friday, right? It starts then, and the hecticness continues on. We have to make sure that we checked everyone off the list for presents, make sure you got something for your cousin's kid's best friend or something, and no one knows what to get Dad, and you're like, we're not getting him a gift card, knowing you're going to get him a gift card, right? But between the songs and the Christmas movies you want to watch and all of the traditions that you want to squeeze into this season, on top of the fact that the weather is getting challenging now and the regular life has the audacity to continue to happen during all of it, all of a sudden for you, the season of Advent might just be a bunch of symbols thrown together. It might end up being just like, if I ask you really what Advent really means to you in your heart level, it might be something like Jesus dressed up as Santa Claus riding a motorcycle in the mountains, right? It might be just as convoluted as something like that if we're really honest with ourselves and with each other. So this series that we're going to talk about with Advent as we step into the season, we're going to put out some hard invitations around what this season is actually about. And it's not the food, although the food is good. It's not a Bing Crosby, although Bing Crosby is good. It's not your favorite Christmas movies. All these things are great, but this season is about something that typically we don't enjoy very much. It's something that all of us know something about and none of us like to do. The season of Advent, and we'll talk about this in just a little bit, but the season of Advent is about waiting. The season of Advent is about knowing that you want something in the future, but it's not quite there yet. We're having to wait, and that's painful, and it's hard, and that's essentially at its core what Advent is about. And when I'm thinking about waiting, especially the feeling that waiting, like that, just that pain, that just kind of ache of wanting something to be here, but it's not, I was trying to think of a clip, and only one came to mind. Let's take a look.
They're all sloths?
Flash, 100-yard dash. Buddy, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too.
Hey, Flash, I'd love you to meet my friend. Darling, I've forgotten your name.
Officer Judy Hobbs, CPD, how are you?
I am doing just
Fine.
as well as I can be. What
Hang in there.
can I do
Well, I was hoping you could run a play.
for you
Well, I was hoping you could.
today?
Well, I was hoping you could run a play for us. We are in a really big hurry.
Sure. What's the plate
29 T
number?
29 THD03.
Two, 9,
THD03.
T,
HD03.
H,
D03.
D,
03.
0.
3.
We can only have clips be so long to get things like put on like line and have things not taken down for copyright, all these different things. And it's very difficult to get that clip long enough because there's so much blank space in that clip. I put us out of our misery because that scene is from a movie called Zootopia. Who's seen Zootopia? I'm just curious. Okay, so a lot of people in here, if you haven't seen it, it's not just some little kids animated movie makes some really salient, really lovely points. But in this, you're talking about Officer Judy Hopps, who is the first rabbit cop ever at the Zootopia Police Department. And she is having to work with this con artist, fox person, who is named, the guy, Jason Bateman is the voice of him. And basically, he's kind of giving her the runaround. He's slowing her down and takes her to see his buddy who works at the DMV. And that clip, the most fun thing is watching you all watch that clip, because everybody gets a little tense during it. I'm not saying that the point I'm making is not like, man, we all know what it's like to deal with somebody who's slow, right? Even though we might know what it's like to deal with somebody who doesn't seem to be in a hurry. I'm not saying that we don't all have sterling experiences at the DMV. I'm saying that no matter who you are, no matter where you're from or how old you are, we all know what it's like to wait for something. Waiting is not a popular idea. My generation, I fall solidly in the millennial category. My generation is often critiqued for not being able to wait for things. But the truth is that everyone in every generation is now conditioned to not wait well, right? The entire bent of our technological advancement over the last 25 years is to make everything faster. Have you ever gotten on Wi-Fi where it's just like there's something wrong and it works but only kind of? You load like a web page and it takes just the extra second, and you're like, what is wrong with this place, right? They're talking about 5G phones were a thing. I got an ad in the mail for 10G. I'm like, where are we hiding these G? Like, where do we need more G? Like, it was advertising that we can make the new phones are going to be. It's always like they're going to be 3 times faster. I'm like, how? They're already pretty much instant. Like, do I personally need the ability to upload pictures of my breakfast instantly to the rest of the world? Maybe not, right? Sure, okay, and people in the medical field, implementation for those in the military, first responder roles, but for the vast majority of us, we don't maybe need instantaneous access to everything. Perhaps can the intentional act of waiting be a help? Maybe if I know that I'll have time to dedicate to it later, maybe I will put away my phone and instead be there at whatever God has put in front of me. And this isn't just technology, it's seeped into everything that we do. You're like this, yeah, you're right, Chris. Some people have a major problem with waiting. Okay, here's a good test. If you're second in line at the stoplight, how long before you honk your horn when it turns green and the person doesn't go in front of you? It is less than 3 seconds, right? It's not a hard count of 3 for sure, right? And I'm not saying that we should all drive with no sense of efficiency, but have you ever caught yourself angry with traffic or something on the weekend, like you're trying to get to a hardware store for something, and then people all of a sudden are just like, somebody is acting like they don't have anywhere to be, and then you're just mad by the time you get someplace, and then when you get there, you realize that you're in a terrible mood now, and you don't actually have to be there at a specific time. You were just rushed for some reason. It's because we're all conditioned now to need faster, to need max efficiency, to need to get there sooner every single time. We're always in a hurry, which is why Advent, although part of an old traditional church calendar, is perhaps just as relevant, if not more, today than it ever has been, because Advent is about waiting. And informing this primary understanding, setting this tone for the season of Advent, is a prophecy that comes out of Isaiah. And it provides this zoomed out version of the story that we read to so many kind of gospel accounts of Jesus' life. A lot of times the the Gospels are quoting older parts of the Bible as well, or drawing inspiration from the prophets. And this is certainly the case in one of these, because the prophet of Isaiah was preaching about how there would indeed be God coming to earth someday to save these people of Israel. Because Israel was hurting. They were basically a forgotten people wiped off the map, and they were wondering, does God care? It established the overall emotional tone of what people were wading into at the time with this verse in Isaiah. You heard it read before, Isaiah chapter 9 here. We are going to jump into that. I am going to flip to it, intentionally giving you time if you would like to take out your internet rectangles or Bibles that fold or whatever. I will read it to you in just a moment, but if you want to find it, you can. This is an intentional pause, or you can stare at me awkwardly. Took that option, did you? Isaiah chapter 9, verse 2. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing their plunder. For as in the days of Midian's defeat, they're saying, remember back in those good old days, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. Basically, all the stuff that we needed to fight, we're not going to need it anymore. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his greatness and peace, there will be no end. The reason that these words are spoken over Christmas so often, and if you're like me, you might notice it kind of creates this moment where you say, there will be this everlasting peace. It kind of all of a sudden slows down Christmas a little bit. Similar to like Linus, in the Charlie Brown Christmas, when Linus goes out there and he actually recites a part from the New Testament, but one might submit, as I am, that the original gospel author is maybe drawing some inspiration from Isaiah and some of what he wrote as well. Because when you bring forth the gospel message into a frenetic world of crazy things, all of a sudden, things slow down. It doesn't feel quite as hectic. All of a sudden, there's a different truth in front of you. And it begs a question as whenever things kind of slow down and we're, oh, okay. When we actually slow down and pause, we realize that we were rushing. And it begs the question, what are you waiting for? We're all waiting on something, right? There are prophets like Isaiah that have pointed to Jesus and how he would live and die to defeat the power of sin and death and rise again from the grave. This is the type of stuff you hear us talking a lot about around here because of that life and death and resurrection, because of Jesus defeating sin and brokenness. Our shortcomings, our past mistakes, those things that others or even yourself might have used to define you, doesn't actually define you anymore. Because God is reclaiming in us what Genesis 1 said God thought about us when he made us, which is very good. Even though we will mess it up because we live in this broken world, God is reclaiming that very good for us. And my main concern the other day was whether or not Krispy Kreme got my order right. Right? There's a little bit of a chasm here in which we're like, yes, I have been set free of the power of sin and death, and all of these things don't define me anymore. And we're like, so, okay, man, what's on your mind? You seem a little stressed. Is it the power of sin and death? No, man, just emails, right? And here's the thing, like I'm not trying to belittle the things that you're waiting on, right? It's important to acknowledge that the things that take up the primary bandwidth in our admittedly very short attention spans have very little to do with the promises of God and much more to do with the mechanics of how we're fitting into the world around us. Now, this is not a sermon that's telling you to get over your problems because Jesus died for you. That's not what I'm saying. Because our day-to-day stuff matters to a certain extent. And sure, some of us need to chill with some of the things that we're worried about, or maybe reorder our priorities. Midwest football fans, no, Sam Darnold is not the solution at quarterback for the Vikings, and it's okay that we don't know what the solution is going to be. The world is not going to come to an end when they inevitably lose in the playoffs once again, all right? Maybe sports fans, Hawkeyes fans, Cyclones fans, I know they both won, right? Exciting, but maybe it's not okay to let it ruin your day when your sports team loses, or maybe it's definitely not okay when the rushing and prioritizing of something in your season, your whole day, you can't ruin somebody else's day because your sports team loses. Maybe our focus and our passion is on something a little different. Maybe for you it's not just that. Maybe it's a thing at work. Maybe in the midst of a good day, hyper-focusing and replaying that one negative thing that somebody might have said to you. Amidst a really great day, there was that one person who maybe said something passive-aggressive. Maybe it was meant to slight you, but who knows? And you're sitting there at home at dinner with your family going, but what did they mean? I'm not belittling what you're waiting on, because maybe you're like, I just am waiting. I just want to be accepted. I just want to make sure that things are going okay. I want to make sure that I'm doing a good job. I want to make sure that I'm checking all of the boxes and be a good mom or be a good dad or be a good employee or I'm trying to be the person that I'm supposed to be. All of these little things are real and they affect you and how they live your life, but I also know that a lot of you are waiting on a little bit more than regular stuff as well. I've spoken to many of you who are waiting or have waited recently on test results, on diagnosis for yourself or a loved one. Some of you are waiting for someone you care to get out of a cycle of self-destruction. You're just praying for this person and you don't know how to say anything any different than you ever did, but like maybe they'll get better. Some of you are waiting on the results of a job interview or trying to zero in on medications and dosages and amounts so you can finally feel like yourself again. All of us, in some way or another, are a bunny waiting on a sloth. All of us are somebody trying, each and every one of us is our someone. I'll have to figure that out. Anyway, we'll fix it in post. We won't. Each and every one of us are waiting on something that we feel is important and are trying to do the right thing. None of us are trying to focus on things that are unimportant because at the core of us, we're asking a lot of the same questions, right? And we're trying to make things better. We're trying to do the right things, and for some reason, life just keeps getting in the way. And the right thing there is that this is where the story of Advent, the story of waiting, meets us. No matter what you're waiting for, it's always connected essentially to the root struggle, which is the brokenness of the world. We are all, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. No one is enamored with the world and like, wow, everything is going great. Everything is perfect. Man, isn't my life flawless? You're looking behind you, you're like, what? Brokenness in the world? Yeah, we're all painfully aware of how imperfect the world is, and we are all aware that we are part of that imperfection. If it's news to you that you're not perfect, we can talk afterwards. But I say that in jest because of course you know that we will mess it up. Of course you know that we'll struggle because it happens daily. Of course we know that things will happen to us through the action of others and through us as we hurt those around us and our coping mechanisms and our own imperfections. Regardless of whether you're waiting on something that seems trivial on the surface or whether you're waiting on some of this deeper stuff, the core concern in our waiting center around these questions. Are things going to be broken forever? When are things going to be fixed? You're like, if you really drill down to whatever you're waiting for, you answered that first question that I asked, what are you waiting for? Like, I'm just trying to be better. I'm just trying to be the person I'm supposed to be. I just want to do more, like I'm just trying to get a hold of whatever God's put in front of me, or maybe I'm just trying to climb the ladder as much as I can, or I'm trying to be somebody that person wasn't for me when I was little. Whatever those circumstances are for you that you're living into, the core questions are, when is it going to be better? And where is this God, hope, that you preach about all of the time? Does God even care? And that is the story of Advent, because the question behind this question then, if we're brave enough to go one more step, is when will God do something about this world? You're like, okay, I hear you that God maybe cares, but if God is almighty, then why is everything the way that it is? It's easy, especially at this time of year, to look at the story of Jesus as something that happened a couple thousand years ago, and usually it's just the focus of a worship service amidst the rest of the week when we deal with the real world, right? But now for so many of us, baby Jesus in the manger is just another part of Advent scenes in the front of people's yard, or a part of a Christmas program for kids, which is a nice break from the real stuff and the work that we face the rest of the time. A lot of us know that what I just said intellectually is not true, right? But a lot of us practically behave as if that's what we believe a lot of the time. But the important thing to remember is that Advent is about the promise that God will show up for God's people and fix what is broken. That is the promise that the people of Israel were waiting on. They said, I know that my God is going to show up someday. You know what? I know that we've had, by the time that we get to the New Testament, the nation of Israel has basically become an oppressed people, just a small footnote amongst a bunch of other peoples. They're feeling unimportant, they're feeling neglected, and they're feeling very lost. And they just keep saying for several hundred years, well, maybe someday it'll get better. Maybe our God will show up, because that was the promise. Advent is about that waiting of someday God's going to show up and do it. Advent is that promise. The story of Jesus, the gospel story, that we get to breathe, that we get to celebrate in Jesus being born. The story of Jesus is about how God does fix that. God does indeed show up. God does manifest in the form of a person to show us how to live for each other and what it looks like to live the life that God's blessed us with. So Advent's the story about waiting, and the story of Jesus is about how God fulfills that promise. And you're like, well, that's great for them, but what does that mean for me now? We are also in a season of waiting where we know that Jesus died and rose again to defeat the power of sin and death, and you're like, great, cool. But we're also in the in-between, because we know that's the case, but we're also waiting for Jesus to come again. We are also in the season of Advent, in a season of waiting for Jesus to come again to fix the broken parts of this world. We believe that is something that is definitely going to happen, but we're in the in-between. We're in the waiting. But we get to point confidently in this tradition. You're like, oh, what? How did Christmas end up getting to be such a big thing? It has nothing to do with Kris Kringle. It has everything to do with the fact that the greatest story ever told is that God made good on the promise of fixing things. And because we know that that is the type of God that we worship, we are worshiping a God who is going to fulfill that promise again. It's a beautiful thing. And we get to be a part in that as well. We get to be a part of that fulfillment in which God uses us to bless other people as well. And so in that season of waiting, it's not us sitting around going, well, someday when Jesus comes back, finally then things can be better. What do we pray each and every time? We're actually going to do it here in just a little bit together before communion, but we pray in the Lord's Prayer, God, your kingdom come. That's not like, hey, God, end the world. No, we're praying for God's kingdom to be in our midst. On our Mondays, not just on our Sundays. We're talking about God. We're asking God, please help the way that you want the world to be. We'd like it to be that way here in our everyday lives. And God being a person and showing up and showing us how to live life is God saying, yeah, we can do that. We get to follow the example of Jesus in our lives. And so in this Advent season, we're going to have to do some waiting. We're waiting for Christmas, and it's hard to wait for presents. It just is, right? And when you're like, oh man, I can't wait to open that thing. I accidentally did the thing where I opened a gift that was for me, and now I know what it is, but I'm not allowed to play with it because I can't, because it's not Christmas yet. It's hard. My prayer for us, friends, is that we wouldn't wait going, is God going to do something about this? We would be the kid who knows, the kid, or in this case, a 33-year-old kid. We would be the person who knows what they're getting for Christmas and knows it's everything that they want. We just can't play with it yet. It's not Christmas. Friends, whatever you're going through, I'm really sorry that you are. I'm really sorry that we live in a world where there's a lot of brokenness, there's a lot of pain, where there's funerals for teachers with little kids that I had to do recently. There's people who are not living as long as they should. There's violence. There's kids not being included at schools. There's stories that just make you want to pull your hair out. There's people unkind to each other on the internet. There's the ways that we look at ourselves in the mirror. It's very evident that we are in a season of waiting for things to get put back together. But guess what? Advent is the promise that things are going to get better. So let's walk with God in making God's kingdom here, making God's kingdom evident, helping to heal the world around us by following that example of Jesus, and knowing that that gift has already arrived. That when we get to finally step on the other side of this, that when Jesus does indeed come back, when there is the great reconciling of all things, then we know without a doubt that everything's going to be okay. And in the middle of our waiting, we can wait patiently and expectantly and love people around us as we do. Sound good? The men of hope in the room that are involved with men's ministry know I will always have questions. So here they are. Consider this week. Feel free to take out your phone. I'll know you're not tweeting or whatever they call it these days. You take a picture of this or write this down. Think about this week. Set some time aside if you'd like to not do it now. But what are you waiting for? Do you know the thing? Sometimes just awareness is the main thing. What are you waiting for? And where is God in the midst of that waiting? Have you allowed God to step into the waiting with you? Maybe it's not something you've ever even really considered inviting God into if it's something that's outside of a stereotypically spiritual thing. Did you know God does care about the things that you care about as well? Where is God inviting you to continue to grow in this season of waiting? So what are you waiting for, and where is God in that midst? Because another thing that we like to talk about are the ways that we can remember these promises of God. Because remembering is important. One of the ways that we know that remembering is important is on the day that Jesus was betrayed, he was with all of his friends. And what happened was he was with all of those people, and he took bread. And he said, what we're going to do is eat, and we're going to remember this promise that I have made. And so we're going to take part in this ancient tradition as well. And so it's called a sacrament, actually. We have two of them here in the Lutheran faith. We have baptism, and we have the Lord's Supper. And the word sacrament is a fancy seminary word full of student loans, but I will give you the behind the scenes here. Sacrament just means a special way in which God shows up. So that's what we're going to do here tonight. This isn't just the Sunday at the end of a long weekend in which we're all thinking about what we have to do the next day. No, this is a chance for us to go, God, I'm in a season of waiting, but I know that you're here with me. So let's enter into this old sacramental tradition, this special way that we get to be with God. Let's do this in a new way this weekend. Anyone is able to participate in this. Anybody can come if they desire to have more Jesus in their lives. This meal is for you. Because on the night Jesus was betrayed, he took bread and he broke it and he said, "This is my body broken for you. Take and eat and do so in remembrance of me." And likewise, after dinner, he took the cup of wine and he said, "This is my blood spilled for you, for the covenant, for the promise, that promise that we were talking about." God is going to make things better. That God does indeed make things better. Not in a Santa wish list way, but in a way that heals all wrongs, that defeats all death, and brings us into God's kingdom. It says, "Take and drink and do this in remembrance of me." So in just a minute, and I'll invite communion servers forward to get ready to do their thing. But basically, what will happen is you'll be dismissed by ushers, and you can come forward. You can receive the bread, and as Jesus' body broken for you. You can take the light-colored grape juice, which has no alcohol in it, or the dark-colored wine, which does. Again, light-colored grape juice, or the dark-colored wine. Whichever is good for you. God can work with both of it. So anyone is welcome at this table. But as we come to this, it's not because what we order is fancy or magical. It's because God is in the midst of it. So no matter what you're going through, you're waiting. No matter what you're going through in your anticipation of what is to come, this table is for you. So let's come to the table and meet God in the midst of it. Let's come and eat.
Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us for service online.
If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We don't think it's any accident that you're here, and we have been praying for you.
To see more of our content, know when we go live, and stay up to date week to week, feel free to subscribe to this channel.
And if you live close by one of our campuses or local sites, we invite you to check us out in person. We would love to meet you. And don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date.
See you next week.